So, my dear learners, now we are going to learn about reproduction in the human beings. So, here we go. We are going to start with this male reproductive system. So, male reproductive system consists of a pair of testes, which produce male reproductive cells called sperms, and the hormone testosterone. For now, we are just going through the theoretical portion. We'll once discuss about all these reproductive parts in the diagram, and then we'll again read the theoretical portion for the better understanding. Okay. So reproductive system है जो males का, it consists of a pair of testes. इसमें एक pair of testes होती हैं, and that testes are responsible for the production of male reproductive cells which are called as sperms. तो जो sperms है वो कहाँ पर produce होते हैं? In the testes, and it also releases the hormone called as testosterone. Okay. So it is contained in a sac-like structure called the scrotum. तो स्ट्रोटम एक सैक लाइक स्ट्रक्चर होता है जिसके अंदर जो टेस्टिस है उसे प्लेस किया गया होता है. From each testis arises a tube which is called as vas deferens. तो हर एक टेस्टिस means दो टेस्टिस हैं, तो दोनों टेस्टिस से there arises a tube which is called as vas deferens, and it joins into the urethra. ये urethra के साथ में join करती है. The urethra is enclosed in a muscular organ called the penis, and it has an opening called genital pore. Opening को क्या कहते हैं? Genital pore. The seminal vesicle and the prostate glands produce fluids which provide nutrition to help in the movement of sperms. So this is the main diagram where this is the basically testis जो हमने पढ़ा, जहां पर production of male gametes takes place and the male gametes are called as sperms. And ये जो testis हैं, they also produce testosterone, a male hormone which is responsible for puberty in males. And then we have this vas deferens. These tubes are vas deferens, which are also connected with another big tube, or we can say the part epididymis, but you're not going to learn about it. Epididymis is not for you guys. So from here we are learning about the vas deferens, and it is then vas deferens के बाद हमारे पास क्या है? It is then joined into the urethra. Here it is urethra, and it is joined. Then we have and then the urethra is enclosed in penis, right? So this particular lining is the penis, and this opening is called as the genital pore. Okay. So here we have two glands. This is the seminal vesicle, and then we have this prostate gland. And these two glands, that is seminal vesicle and prostate gland, are responsible. ये क्या करती हैं? They produce some fluids which provide nutrition to the sperm and helps in the movement of sperm. तो ये जो sperm है हमारे पास, ये कैसे produce होता है? It is produced here in the testis. Then it is transported with the help of vas deferens. तो देखो ये vas deferens की help से ये यहाँ पर मूव करेगा, पूरी मूवमेंट होगी, और सेमिनल वेसिकल और प्रोस्टेट ग्लैंड है जो वो अपनी सिक्रीशंस इसमें ऐड करेंगे टू प्रोवाइड न्यूट्रिशन टू दी sperm. And ये जो sperm है, it will then comes to the urethra, which is enclosed in penis, and through the genital pore it will then be sent to the female reproductive system, right? So this was about the male reproductive system. इसमें भी अगर हम बात करें sperm की, तो sperm का diagram is very very important. तो आपको sperm का diagram आ सकता है, and आपको इनके जो parts हैं इनके बारे में क्वेश्चनिंग की जाती है. Let's explain the parts of the sperm. Okay, so सबसे पहले we have acrosome. Acrosome क्या होता है? ये आप देख सकते हैं. This hard part, यहाँ पर जो sperm का head है, head के आगे is a covering to protect the head from any injury. तो इस part को हम क्या बोलते हैं? Acrosome. Then is the head part. Then comes the mid piece and this long tail. This long tail help in the movement of sperm in the female reproductive system. Okay. So this was all about the male reproductive system. अगर आप चाहें तो ये जो है स्पर्म के पार्ट्स के बारे में एक शॉर्ट नोट बना सकते हैं. लाइक द फर्स्ट वन वी हैव इज एक्रोसोम. तो एक्रोसोम का क्या फंक्शन होता है? इट्स फंक्शन इज टू प्रोटेक्ट द स्पर्म फ्रॉम एनी इंजरी. एक्रोसोम इज अ हार्ड कवरिंग ऑन द हेड ऑफ द sperm. So the very second we have here is head, and then we have this middle piece, and then we have tail. It is also called as mid piece or middle piece, and then at last we have is tail. Okay, so let's now start with the female reproductive system. अगर हम female reproductive system की बात करें तो female reproductive system consists of a pair of ovaries. इसमें क्या होता है? pair of ovaries. ovaries का function क्या होता है? to produce the female reproductive cells which are called as ova or eggs and the hormone oestrogen. Above the ovaries are tubes. ovaries के ऊपर क्या होती हैं? tubes होती हैं जिन्हें हम बोलते हैं oviduct. oviduct और fallopian tubes, और इनका function क्या होता है? to transport the female reproductive cells from the ovary to the uterus, right? to the uterus. So जो uterus है it unite into bag like structure called as uterus. जो हमारे पास oviduct होती हैं वो एक बैग लाइक स्ट्रक्चर जिसे हम यूट्रस बोलते हैं उसके साथ यूनाइट करते हैं, मींस कनेक्ट करते हैं. एंड द यूट्रस हैज ओपनिंग कॉल्ड वेजाइना. और जो यूट्रस की ओपनिंग होती है, दिस ओपनिंग फ्रॉम हियर, दिस पर्टिकुलर ओपनिंग इज कॉल्ड वेजाइना. ओके, तो अगर हम डायग्राम में देखें, सो अ पेयर ऑफ ओवरीज मींस दीज आर द ओवरीज. और जो ओवरीज हैं these are connected with this fallopian tube from both the sides, and here this particular part is the uterus, and uterus की जो ओपनिंग है उसे हम बोलते हैं वजाइना. ओके, तो इसमें क्या है? इसमें एग के कैसे मूवमेंट होगी, कैसे इट विल कम. तो ओवरी विल रिलीज द एग एंड fallopian tube will carry it. और जो fallopian tube में है sperm and एग की फर्टिलाइजेशन हो जाएगी, फ्यूजन हो जाएगी, एंड इट विल लीड्स टू द फॉर्मेशन ऑफ जाइगोट. और जो जाइगोट है इट विल कम हियर एंड इट विल स्टार्ट टू इम्प्लांट हियर इन द यूट्रस, इन द यूट्राइन वॉल. Okay, so this is about the female reproductive system, or here we have the diagram of human ovum or the egg, we can say. So these are the outer covering and this is the main part of the egg. So next we have fertilization in human beings. Human beings में fertilization कैसे होती है? Now we are going to study about that. So here we have during sexual intercourse the sperms from the male enters into the vagina of females. तो sexual intercourse में क्या होता है? जो sperms है हमारे पास from male, जो males के sperms हैं they enter into the vagina of female, and from there they reaches the oviduct. वो oviduct तक जाती है, मीन्स fallopian tube तक जाती है, जैसे मैंने आपको लास्ट स्लाइड में बताया. तो वन स्पर्म फ्यूजेस विद एग एंड फॉर्म्स अ जाइगोट. तो उसमें से सिर्फ एक स्पर्म एग के साथ में फ्यूजन करके जाइगोट की फॉर्मेशन करता है, एंड जाइगोट देन गेट्स इम्प्लांटेड इनटू द यूट्रस, और भी यूट्रस में इम्प्लांट हो जाता है. The zygote then start dividing to form the embryo, and the embryo gets nutrition from the mother's blood through the placenta. Very, very important. You can be asked a question about the placenta. It is very important from examination point of view. You should write it down that a question can be asked to you on the importance of placenta. Question will be like, what is placenta and why it is important? तो placenta के main functions क्या होते हैं? To provide nutrition to the embryo from the mother's blood, and to provide oxygen to the growing embryo from mother's blood, and और इसका क्या function है? To get the waste material from the embryo to the mother's blood. सबसे पहले वो क्या करेगा? वो nutrition provide करेगा from mother's blood to the zygote. Okay, और zygote, or we can say the embryo. और जो embryo का waste product होगा वो भी placenta के through ही mother के blood में release किया जाएगा. And then और क्या फंक्शन है इसका? टू प्रोवाइड ऑक्सीजन टू द एम्ब्रियो. और अगर एम्ब्रियो को ऑक्सीजन प्रोवाइड की जा रही है तो इट इज वेरी ऑब्वियस दैट द कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड विल बी रिलीज्ड बाय द एम्ब्रियो, एंड दैट विल बी ट्रांसफर्ड टू द मदर्स ब्लड विद द हेल्प ऑफ प्लेसेंटा. So placenta has two main functions here. One is related to the nutrition and the second one is related to the oxygen and carbon dioxide. Okay, so the development of child takes place 9 months and then the child is born. So it is something like that 9 months are taken for the development of child before the birth of child. Here is a procedure of 9 months which needs to be taken out. So here we comes at the diagram. So stages of development, early embryo कैसे होता है? सबसे पहले ओवरी इज रिलीजिंग एग. तो ये जो एग है दिस इज अनफर्टिलाइज्ड. ओके, यहाँ पर क्या हुआ ये देखो, यू कैन सी द स्पर्म्स. इसमें से सिर्फ एक स्पर्म जो है इसके साथ में फर्टिलाइजेशन करेगा. ऐसा नहीं हो सकता कि 2 या 3 कर ली. ओके, ओनली वन स्पर्म विल गेट फ्यूज्ड विद द एग ऑफ द फीमेल. सो अगेन अगर जब हम आगे जाएंगे तो यहाँ पर 2 स्टेज है, मींस 2 जो सेल डिवीजन है वो हुई है सिंगल टाइम और 2 है यहाँ पर. अगर हम यहाँ पर बात करें तो 4 सेल स्टेज है, यहाँ पर 4 सेल्स हैं. इट कम्स द 8 सेल्स एंड देन क्या होता है कि इट स्टार्ट्स टू इम्प्लांट इनसाइड द यूट्रस and this wall is called as endometrium. Here implantation takes place and the structure which is getting implanted is blastocyst. It will come here and get implanted into the endometrium, or we can say uterine wall of the female. So this was about fertilization in human beings. Now let's have a look at some of the important diagrams. So this was the diagram that we have already discussed in the previous slide. So let's have a look at it. Here it is the diagram of your this formation of placenta takes place. Right, this disc-like structure is the placenta. From here you can see there's something tube-like structure that is connecting that embryo with the mother. So this is responsible for a lot of processes that I have explained to you, like nutrition and oxygen and carbon intake and exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen. And if we come to this labeling, you need not to remember. This labeling is for higher classes. You just need to remember is the structure of placenta. Okay, so fetus in utero, here you just need to remember this placenta. Placenta कैसे connect हुआ है, and then is uterus. This is the uterus, cervix जो हमने female reproductive part में भी पढ़ा था, and this is the uterine wall. This is all you need to remember. You can also think of this umbilical cord, right? Other parts are not for your class, so you can skip these parts. Next we have is menstruation, right? What we mean by menstruation? The ovary produces one egg every month. हर month जो ovary है एक egg produce करती है, and the uterus prepare to receive the fertilized egg. और जो uterus है वो अपने आप को prepare करती है to receive that fertilized egg. और अगर वो fertilized egg ना हो, ये तो हमने ये केस क्या किया जिस टाइम पर sperm and जो हमारा egg है that gets fused, right? Fusion takes place and fertilization takes place, we can see in scientific terms. So अगर ये fertilization ना हो तो क्या होगा? Its walls become thick and spongy with blood vessels for nourishing the embryo. क्या होता है कि जो हमारा uterus है it gets thick and spongy. वहां पर जो blood vessels है वो बहुत ज्यादा flow होने लगता है उस टाइम पर, so that it can receive that fertilized egg and provide nutrition to that, right? But in case fertilization do not takes place तो क्या होता है, जो uterus की wall है it breaks and comes out of the vagina as blood and mucus. This cycle takes place once every month and is called as menstruation. Okay, so menstruation is something related to unfertilization. जिस टाइम पर जो हमारे uterus है fertilized egg receive नहीं करते हैं, the walls of the uterus which are very rich with blood vessels at that time used to break down and that blood comes out of vagina in the form of blood and mucus. And this cycle takes place once every month and is called, and this process is called as menstruation. And if in any case fertilization takes place, that month menstruation is not going to take place. But in some cases what happen, it is also due to in some cases the lack of menstruation or absence of menstruation can also be due to some stress or some activities that can cause it. Okay, so absence of menstruation in every case doesn't mean that fertilized egg is received. So the very next we have reproductive health. Now we'll be discussing some of the important terms. So first we have sexually transmitted diseases. These are the diseases that are transmitted through sexual contact, and the examples are HIV and AIDS. Okay, the main example we are going to learn are HIV and AIDS. This is human immunovirus, and then we have is AIDS. Can you tell me the full form of AIDS? It is very common. You have already learned about this in your previous classes. AIDS is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, right? And HIV is human immunodeficiency virus. So the full form can be asked to you. That is why I have here emphasized more on this. Full form can be asked in 1 mark. Okay. So sexually transmitted diseases are those diseases which are transmitted through sexual contact, and examples are HIV and AIDS. And next we have prevention of pregnancy. To prevent the pregnancy, there are some of the methods which are called as contraception. The prevention of pregnancy can be due to any of the reason. It may be concerned with the health of the mother or the embryo or both of those, or there may be due to um, for having space between two childs in the family. So we have three main methods, that is barrier methods. Barrier methods are those methods which consist of using condoms, diaphragm, the cervical caps and copper T, etc. Chemical method, which consists of taking drugs like oral pills and vaginal pills. So next we have a surgical method. The surgical method consists of removing or tying a small part of the vas deferens in males, which is called as vasectomy, and fallopian tube in the female, that is called pubectomy. तो हमारे पास क्या होता है, ये जो बैरियर मेथड्स है ना, बैरियर मेथड्स and chemical methods, these two are the methods which can be reversed, right? After using these methods, after a certain period of time, reproduction can take place. But the surgical method are permanent method in which what happen is जो मेल रिप्रोडक्टिव सिस्टम पढ़ा हमने उसमें से अगर वेस्ट डिफरेंस को हम रिमूव कर दें और वी कैन टाई दैट स्मॉल पार्ट ऑफ स्मॉल डिफरेंस, तो वास्ट डिफरेंस, तो हमारे पास क्या होगा, so transportation of male gametes will not take place, and for the obvious reason the fertilization will not take place. Same in the case of females. If the fallopian tube in the female is cut, or not the whole of the fallopian tube, a small part of fallopian tube is cut or tied, तो उसमें क्या होगा, the transportation of male gamete to the egg, and that egg will not be transported to the fallopian tube or the uterus itself. So fertilization will not take place, and for the immediate reasons, the pregnancy will not take place. Okay, so next we have the advantages of sexual reproduction. The first one is to increase the genetic invariability. Genetic variability को increase करने के लिए in the organism of same species and even within the offspring of one couple. तो क्या होता है, genetic variations लाने के लिए sexual reproduction is very important. In the long run, it allows best adaptations to be the widespread within a species, especially in changing circumstances. Long run में अगर हम देखें तो adaptations लाने के लिए sexual reproduction is one of the best methods, especially जब change कर रहे हो circumstances, in the changing circumstances. Okay, the variability of organism within a specific species guarantees that the higher portion will survive in a Peculiar circumstances, same, the explanation is same as the earlier one, that अगर organisms में variability होगी within a species तो उसके क्या है, एक पॉजिटिव साइड ये रहेगी कि हायर proportion will survive अगर कुछ बहुत ज्यादा worst circumstances भी हमारे पास आ जाते हैं तो. So, my dear learners, this was all about sexual reproduction in human beings. With this topic, we are done with reproduction in human beings. So, let's have a quick revision on that. Okay. What we have learned in this particular chapter is, starting from the very starting, we have learned about reproduction. That what is reproduction? First of all, reproduction is a process by which the young ones are produced within the same species. Okay, so then we learn that reproduction is of two types. Two types of reproduction are, one is asexual and the other one is sexual. राइट, अगर इसमें भी हम पहले एसेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्शन के बारे में देखें तो इन एसेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्शन वी हैव सम मेथड्स ऑफ व्हिच इंक्लूड्स बाइनरी फिजन. बाइनरी फिजन में हमने कौन सी एग्जांपल की थी? अमोएबा की. राइट, इन बाइनरी फिजन वी हैव लर्नड अबाउट द केस ऑफ अमोएबा. Then we have here is budding. So this being the first case. Then we have budding. तो budding का केस हमने किस में पढ़ा था? In hydra. So this is the very second method of asexual reproduction. इसके बाद में here we have is regeneration. Now you need to give the example in case of regeneration and in case of spore formation. You need to give the example. Two examples I have told you, and for the next two you need to write down the examples. Okay. So इसके बाद में हमने पढ़ा था पार्थेनोजेनेसिस के बारे में, जिसमें हमने डिस्कस किया था बीज का एक एक्स्ट्रा केस. So the very next we have now is the method. Then we have learned about sexual reproduction in flowering plants. तो first हमने पढ़ा था in flowering plants. तो फ्लावरिंग प्लांट्स में हमारे पास क्या था? We have learned about two of first one was the male reproductive part. Male reproductive part was stamen. It was stamen, and stamen consists of two parts. The first one is the anther and the second one is the filament, right? And the next we have is the female reproductive part. Female reproductive part में we have is okay. So in female reproductive part we have a pistil, and that pistil was again consisting of three parts: the stigma, style, and ovary. राइट तो जो हमारे पास एंथर था, एंथर वाज रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर प्रोडक्शन ऑफ पोलन ग्रेन्स एंड द पोलन ग्रेन कंटेन द मेल gametes, right? And the stigma is the sticky surface where the pollen grains lands, and style was the surface, a long tube from where the pollen tubes pass down to get into the ovary, and ovary contains the ovules. Okay, so iska structure used to be something like this. This used to be the stigma, and this starts the from here starts the style, and here we have is ovaries. This is just the rough structure, so just to explain you about the structure, this is the stigma, the next one is the style, and this is the ovary, which contain here is ovule. This particular portion is ovule. And अगर हम एंथर की बात करें, so it used to be something like this, like this is the long tube, this part is filament, and anther is the this part, so this part is the anther. Okay, तो इसके बाद में we learned that about the self pollination and cross pollination. सबसे पहले तो हमने पढ़ा कि pollination में क्या होता है, right? We learned about wait. Okay, so we learned about pollination. And then we learned that pollination again is of two types: self pollination, and the other one is cross pollination. Right? Self pollination होती है within the same plant, within the same flower, and cross pollination होती है with another flower. Okay, in which two flowers are there. Right, so इसके बाद we have learned about reproduction in humans. तो उसमें we have learned about male reproductive system. Male reproductive system consists of a pair of testes, which is then joined by the vas deferens, and vas deferens is then connected to the urethra, which is enclosed in the penis, and finally the opening of pore is called as genital pore. And here you need to remember that this testis is produced in a bag-like structure called as scrotum. A question will be asked to you or related to this part, scrotum. Okay, so next we have is female reproductive part. Female reproductive part may we have learned. Okay, so it is female reproductive part or female reproductive organs we can say. Okay. So इसमें the main first we have is ovaries. Ovaries are responsible for production of eggs, and the female gametes the eggs, and the hormones, which is known as estrogen. The second part we have read is oviduct, or we also called it as fallopian tube. Oviduct, or we call it as fallopian tube. Okay, which is then connected to the uterus. After uterus, we have the cervix, and then we have vagina. Okay, so this was all about our chapter number 8, reproduction, related to reproduction in organisms, or how do organisms reproduce. So this was all about our chapter. Let's meet in the next video with a new chapter. Till then, take care. Bye bye.